Welcome to the grim, lawless 23rd century, following the fall of USGov and mass depopulation of major cities at the hands of the multi-trillionaire DeHuberton family. Baptized in radioactive hellfire, a rare mutation makes Turbo a fiercely pumped scrapper, haunted by specters from her past, surviving the post-apocalyptic wasteland one deathmatch pit fight at a time. But when she rescues the stunning trophy girl, the unlikely duo are thrust into a harrowing odyssey, evading marauding berserkers at every turn on their way to the ultimate showdown as they uncover the horrific truth behind the fall of humanity.
Good morning, Jake.
Good morning, everybody, and good morning to Kurt. This is going to be a kind of a bonus episode. People can see that I'm doing the lettering here to give you a computer-generated guide, so you can do hand-generated lettering, which is cheating, but it's gonna look great. And we were, I think, this episode we were gonna try to do a catch-up on the sci-fi timeline.
Yeah, you sent this crazy text last night in pieces.
Breathless texts, and I was like, yeah. So I'll bring those out, but actually I wanted to see if Kurt wanted to spin the wheel of timeline, because I have updates on, I think, pretty much every one of these bullet points. Last night I was sending you, let's see what the texts say. The texts to Kurt say about the sentience, that we should create, like, I don't know if you remember, but you said maybe there'll be a sentient for each astrological symbol. And I was
saying like a astrological, like, in other words, the way a group of people are organized around 12 astrological symbols. So
yeah, well, you're organizing, people into groups. I think with the sentient, it's more about individuals. So your idea put me off on this thing where I was going to take some of the cults, because there are going to be plenty of cults in the pre-story. And so, yeah, maybe there'll be. So I had the idea for one cult around one particular astrological symbol. And so I wrote some notes up on that, and I have an idea building for that. But for the sentience, I was thinking it's more about the individual. Like, every one of these people, at least in the beginning, the people that have longevity are going to be people that need to be kept alive, and their brains need to be kept alive because they are like the key to some incredible technology. And so I was going to divide it up by saying, like, I had the idea of, you remember that great story by Stanley and Steve Ditko, where Steve Ditko probably did all the work, but they have this lizard, this scientist that discovers this lizard formula or some kind of formula, and he becomes his own guinea pig and he turns into the lizard, right?
Yeah.
So instead of having a lizard formula, I have a team of scientists that are, they're in a collective, and they're all like, like-minded. They all have this like kind of like hippy dippy, commune thing going, and they have their kids and their families there. And you might have read that story in the first Substack installment. So I have it where each one of them is going to be, the director of an endeavor of study in a discipline of science that's breaking down all of the forces of nature. And so I wrote down in my frantic text to you, gravity, magnetism, light, sound, temperature, electric charge. And then I have, micro, I guess I meant microwaves, which is radio, like all radio is microwaves, radio waves, let's say. And then nano, and then time. And so if there's a sentient for each one that has the rare abilities and knowledge to make the enhancements, right? Like the thing that everybody cares most about is the human enhancements, but there are, you know, after a while, there are people who come along and they just because they have a lot of money, they can buy longevity too, and they can buy enhancements. Like ways to make the body like process food more efficiently, and you can gain strength, but most people gain will want to gain intelligence, and they want to gain acuity, which is like not just making your brain very intelligent, but making it like process fast, or making it not degenerate at advanced ages. So I have those notes, and that world is definitely percolating. The sentience, it's going to be in the Turbo series, in the Turbo 6-issue graphic novel, because the sentience, I think they have to be either in the prison with Elevina or in a facility close to the prison, because there's going to be a lot, because Elevina herself is going to be kept alive, for her knowledge, even though it's by captors, and the sentients are going to be like that too, and it's going to be a very kind of complex prison that they're in, because it's going to be like a fancy country club dome where the people that want to be there are alongside the sentients that are being kept there for hundreds of years. And I'm not sure how old we should make the oldest sentient. How old do you think we should make the oldest sentient?
So, but isn't Elevena responsible for some of the core values of the technology?
Well, it started before her, but her technology unlocked great advances, especially in nanoparticles. She's the one, like there was lots of discoveries, and this is going to be the thing, like, because her parents are going to be part of the team, and Esoterra's parents are going to be part of the team, and that's why Esoterra was put with them. But Elevena was created by Esoterra later on, just to be the intellectual, scientific, breakthrough researcher, that uses AI and supercomputers to like figure all this shit out by incredible trial and error. And then she has formulas. One of the things that Elevina will do is create something called Elevision, which is goggles that allow people to see interactions between nanoparticle fields, and not only actual, because the whole thing about nano physics um, is that it's not about particles interacting, but it's about probabilities of particles interacting. It's very, very like arcane like stuff. It's very like tough to wrap your mind around. But there's a lot that's unexplained, obviously, in nanoparticle physics, but we're just using that to our advantage because this is sci-fi, and we don't have to. It doesn't have to be scientifically accurate. It just has to be, like a hint of scientificness, and you're off and running. But I try. I mean, I listen to all that stuff. I am like genuinely very interested in quarks and neutrons and leptons and where it's going. It's just frustrating because it's not neat and sweet like Newtonian physics, because the the explanations for things have to do with probabilities and something they have not really fleshed out yet, which is dark matter and dark energy. And we're still, scientists are really still just grappling with it. I'm just assuming that they figure some stuff out in the next 100 years. But Esoterra starts demonstrating a lot of these principles, not only being able to manipulate like human enhancement, but to be able to affect matter and energy like a superhero. or or maybe like Uri Geller or something like that. Like I'm not sure how I want to deal with superheroes because I don't want it to be like caped, crusaders, but I want to carry the story
Yeah,
along.
but doesn't that become like mutants?
Yeah, well, Esoterra is not no. Esoterra, she has the nickname the Mystic Destroyer because everybody thinks she's a Doctor Strange like superhero, but everything she's doing has a scientific explanation. Esoteric just couldn't explain it, and that's why she conceived Elevina, the perfect, enhanced and intellectually enhanced. Like she's gonna know enough to make an intellectually enhanced baby, and it's not gonna work. The first 10 times are gonna be miscarriages, and that's why she's called Elevina. And so, I'm trying to backfill like all these explanations and everything, and try to make the year make sense. But I have those notes because there's a lot of stuff coming together, and I wanted to know if you wanted to spin the wheel of bullets. I spoke about the scientist team, and I spoke about all of these kind of like I call them like the competition for lack of a better word, but they're like rival scientists who get a hold of the published papers and then they take it on and they become guinea pigs of human enhancement, and so they become like these like crazy commando extremist guys, and they go back and they kill all of the inventors of the technology because they don't want anybody to stop them from being the forefront guy. But they also have I don't know, like we'll take it case by case. There's a lot of these different disciplines here, but the other side, there's also going to be sentients who are bad. They started out as guinea pigs, and they killed the researchers that were like beneficial to mankind, and we'll have that. But then you got the element in those eras or in those decades of the story. There's also going to be the flying peas, which are flying around. They're what directed the parents to Esoterra in the first place, and they don't go away. They help Esoterra her whole life long, including the assembling of Chromita. The flying peas become Chromita eventually, but it takes 10 years of building itself. Like a robot building itself. Little micro robots are all, you know, coming together with one mind, and they start building like, the body, and then they start building the legs and the arms, and then they start building the head. And then when Esoterra is in her 20s, let's say 24, uh, Chromita will be fully built, and that's when they meet Hellclaw, and they become a super team. So that's going to be the Esoterra and the Casualties bullet, and Elevina will be the next generation. So spinning the wheel, we have the end of the world timeline featuring the Casualties, that's Esoterra, Hellclaw, and Chromita, the arrival of the chronomorph giantesses, the secret chronicles of the Duke. We spoke about Chromita, the she-bot who built herself. We got Broken Family, the rise of the pleasure bots. We got Descent into Cultism, the Tuesday movement, and now we are going to have another movement of all Capricorns, and they're going to build a city state out on the water of coastal New Jersey. And it's going to be a large population, maybe like 200,000 people, and they're all Capricorns. You want to hear that little blurb?
Yes, yes,
You
yes.
inspired it, and there will be some other like zodiac cults and some numerology cults and stuff. I mean, obviously the Tuesday cult is the big numerology cult, but so it says, oh, Yeah, I moved it over here. Hold on. I have this new app on my new phone called Journal. Okay. So the cults were comprised of Capricorns. They were due a guaranteed basic income for life. And they had a belief that not cults, but occults like this bonded people for deep spiritual meaning that go back, you know, to the beginning of time. And over the decades, they planned more and more births to make sure that they were born Capricorns. And until the population was 99.9% Capricorns, and they felt that that spiritual bond, when it was complete, when they were like, at almost 100%, they felt like the spiritual bond was pure. And there will be these televangelist guys and these megachurch guys who are like charismatic, tycoons that swindle these people for generations and generations. But at the very end, they founded an equitable society, and where everybody in the society makes a contractual commitment when they come of age. Otherwise, they have to leave. And so that's drawing from some things that are in real life, like the Amish and stuff. But um, once they achieve the perfect society, and they have like all of their own sustainable farming, and they have this whole like ecosystem, that's when Tuesday is going to happen, and all the depopulation, and they'll all get wiped out like everybody else. So there will be like some little idyllic commentary, but that was the update on descent into cultism. We also have the sentience, slow birth of longevity, and world in ruin, the ironic saga of Elevina, 2222. So which one do you want to discuss? Like which one? Which one do you have questions about?
Oh, good lord.
You got the
I think it
bulletin.
also falls. Well, when you say timeline, it does. I have yet to concretely form a from 2024 to Turbo Pit Fighters time, and it's only because of the sporadicness of how this kind of stuff is being formulated by you, and it jumping around in order to justify one element to the next, and then
Yeah,
of course that reaction causes then this real fun cool thing. And I'm it's not a critique as much as it is just announcing where I'm at. So out of these, which would be the first thing? Which one would be the first thing that sort of
uh,
puts let's say puts the whole story into
yeah.
moving
There's gonna
forward?
be probably like the 2100s. It'll be getting towards advances in science and robotics, the consolidation of not just corporations but industries, and then the consolidation of industries by with the consolidation of billionaire families with through arranged marriages, and then when you get to the birth of Esoterra is when I started the Substack. So that's the beginning of all these bullet points here. Although, the story will always stretch back by references to things that happened before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right. So that's where we started out, where there's just like these scientists, and then there's this otherworldly flying P that directs two of them to this crack mom that just had a baby in the dead of night, and hands the baby over. So that's when things get rolling. Um, I don't really have anything for Esoterra's. Well, yeah. Well, for Esoterra's childhood, we have that thing where the government moves the scientists into a forest compound away from
right,
civilization, and
right.
Esoterra will grow up with all of the children of the other scientists, And because the scientists are so busy doing all these breakthroughs in this big lab, the kids are unattended and they end up building their own forest treehouse city, and they end up making these breakthroughs of their own, led by Esoterra, who shows them how to use their minds for psychic communication with each other. And they'll have this thing called open ceiling, where you can access, you can just basically kind of do like an astral plane thing, and you access another plane. Is like I was thinking of it like a multiverse or a metaverse in the astral plane, where these kids all meet each other, and they're working on scientific breakthroughs because they're inspired by their parents, but they have this ability to tap into this otherworldly plane because of Esoterra. She's like the ringleader, but she also has the help of the force behind the flying peas. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think the most important part of all of this is you're in a flow state of creativity right now, which has been 20 something years in dormancy. And now that we're making, this is episode 96 and we're heading towards our third year. We've been able to accomplish a lot of ground with about 2 to 3 hours every Sunday. And of course, then we each go off and create other contributions to this, in the way of sketching and stuff. And this then refers back to the Substack for you. But, I'm more, taking it in as information to help support said irrational science and belief systems.
Because you're my representative of people like how much of this is actually getting communicated and absorbed. I mean, one thing I have to correct you is, you said that I've been making this stuff for 20 years. All the stuff in the sci-fi bullet points is new, except for the pleasure bots and the kill crazy priests in space, which isn't even on there. Everything else is recent. And when I look at my old notes here,
Well,
I have stuff here that I was going in a lot of different directions, but these are kind of the rough notes for the 6-issue series, not just the prequels.
yeah, I'm referring very much to the idea that we've surfaced something we were getting into back in 1999 2000, and all we do as artists is just sort of take things from the past that we've experienced and make stuff up. But here you're doing your best to create rational. You're trying to create some rationalizing of whys in story instead of just dumping shit in front of people saying deal with it. This is how it is, which is a lot of story, stuff in comics, especially, can be. So that's how I take it. I just keep trying to file it away to help me, deal with this being here and this coming and this is already gone and let's keep going.
Yeah, it's true. There's just some value added to having your world be, you say rational, or like one thing went to the other, but I'm trying to make like not just a history of it, but it's a way for me to write installments, and have everything all connect. When it comes to Turbo, the overlap is going to be between Elevina and Turbo, because Elevina is only going to be like, let's say, in her 40s when Turbo meets her and gives her the gun, but Turbo will be like about 15, or whatever age she is when she's catapulted out of the orphanage. So that's when the worlds kind of come together. And so, from the beginning of Esoterra to the destruction of the world when Turbo's about 10, and then Turbo is about in her 20s. uh, you know that's as late as we go, so we're really dealing with maybe like a 50-year span only. you know
Yeah.
maybe 60 years. I mean, it depends if Elevina, how old is she when she has how old is Esoterra when she has Elevina? Like, we could make Esoterra a sentient, you know, and she could be quite old when she has Elevina, or or maybe just at the end of her realistic biological age, for having a kid. I mean, she has 10 miscarriages, for God's sake. So it's going to be, that's going to be interesting to explain.
Well, I also align it to like Quentin Tarantino writes volumes of supporting information for not only the story, the place, the time, but even backgrounds, entire backgrounds to the characters. And so when he contracts with, Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt for, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he physically goes over with these binders full of writing and reviews with them, basically downloads to them. The it's not even setting it's just it's just the absolute definitive, but he then allows them to embody said, character. um, in comic books, and I love this part about comic books, and I've spoken about it before, and will continue to speak about it. Is I remember back collecting, some Marvel comics or any kind of comic, that was in a serial, issue 1, issue 2, issue 3, so on and so forth. And maybe it was based on change of writers and artists or teams or whatever, but there could have been something established, let's say at the end of an issue, but then the next issue just sort of picks up from another place in the world and goes for another couple of issues, but then that end of the issue sort of has some kind of justification for merging with that previous issues past. And now in the comic creators have to justify, in a sense, said characters the father or characters the daughter, characters were in a SEAL team together, or just these unveilings of information, because and I think Claremont's really kind of the person that did it best. Is in a soap opera kind of way, you've got to basically justify it. You have to say, okay, and it's not like justification in reality. It's just to keep the story going, to have fun, to
Yeah,
depart from reality and become a thing.
they said Claremont really cared about his characters. He would give them a break, after a big adventure. He would.
Yeah,
Um, but the funny thing about Marvel, that I observed over the years is, it seems like they really did try to keep continuity for as long as they could. Like, how do we explain this? We've been making comics for 40 years, and Peter Parker is still 20 years old. So they had a dedicated position, I remember, at one point, and I think DC did too. Like, just the continuity cop. Denny O'Neil called it the continuity cop, and it was their job to just try to like string all this stuff together. And in the case where two artists or two creative teams did completely different things and they contradicted each other, it started to get
right.
harder and harder and harder, and it became an unmanageable job until both Marvel and DC just said, wait a minute, we have to conceive of this multiverse world where every version is valid in some way. And Marvel took it to the extreme with the Spider-Verse stuff, where you see like Lego dimensions, and it's and Porky the Pig dimensions, and it just gets to be ridiculous. But that was their desperate way of just trying to cleaning up the mess. Like, hey, you said that Peter Parker's grandmother's name was May. Now you're saying it's Ida. And you can't just be like, well, we were wrong in that comic, because
Well, you can. One of the things that was very shocking when the prequels for Star Wars, or the prequels for Star Wars were being produced and so on thing. But there's I don't know, 18 or something, 28 novels
yeah.
that expanded each individual character's lives. Like my best friend and another good friend devoured those, and they would both finish something, and we would be out, even partying, and they would get into like 15 to 30 minute arguments or debates, if you will, about Han Solo being not this anymore. It's like, you know what I mean? Like whoa! But that was all dumped. It was cut, as they say, from the canon.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
we were talking in the last episode. We were talking about the last episode and public domain and AI and Disney and control and IP and branding and all this stuff. And we're always going to be talking about it because we're in the game. But how much of it really matters in place of really good entertainment?
right.
Like, how justifiable is it in necessity? Now, I'm saying this in a devil's advocate, and I don't want you to take it personally, but I think Quentin Tarantino and his movie making and the depth that he drives these characters in, and in a almost 3-hour movie about Hollywood and Manson's and being a second-rate actor, this stuff, it's hard to dismiss. It's just, it's superior immersion into a world you can't beat. Well, you can, and that's your goal as an artist, is to try to beat it. So
Yeah. It's just I don't want to do that. Like, I'm attempting to try to get everything straight, and it's just more for myself, I guess. But
yeah.
you're also hopeful that these worlds live on, and that you live on through your worlds. If we can create something that that lasts beyond our days, maybe somebody takes the torch up
It
later.
will be very interesting, Jake. It will be very interesting when we make our, let's say, full time connection. You
Yeah.
retire,
Right.
and I, and we're in that. Let's say the retirement state of mind. We're not trying. We don't have to hustle this as a job per se. But we'll also be so far along. We'll probably be like 6 to 8 years into this whole thing that, and how many people are going to come to us and say, hey guys, I've been following you since the beginning. I love Turbo, and I'm also a comic book artist, or I'm trying to be, blah, blah, blah. Hey, I got this idea for an esoteric
Yeah.
tarot story. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, that's exactly what we want,
Right.
And
Don't wait.
by documenting,
Don't wait till it
yeah,
becomes
by
public domain.
documenting this.
Wait, do it now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons I love doing Crom the Barbarian, and I say it in my Crom the Barbarian updates on cromthebarbarian.com, is I don't own any of it. I
Yeah.
don't own any of it. So if you bought my book and you read the stories and then you just started drawing and writing your own story from that part and publishing it, God bless you. God bless you. Because I'm not interested in trying to control the narrative. I don't want to control the narrative because I hate when narrative is controlled because it's so limiting for an immersive imagination as I.
Well, you say that, but you also have, Honey and Blood, the Winnie the Pooh slasher movie. So where anybody in the the estate would be cringing, and any true fan of Winnie the Pooh would be cringing, and any fan of
I don't
cinema.
know. I think that's too much. I think that's too much your own opinion, Jake. I don't. I don't. I think we would have to get individuals from said estates, from said fan base. I think it's hilarious. I just think
Well,
it's
you
a
haven't seen the
it's a
movie. It's so bad.
I've seen enough. I've seen enough. I've watched probably 35 minutes worth of reviews and excerpts of
Oh,
it. That just like any terrible movie,
yeah.
you know, it confines itself to being terrible. But that also too for me is a plus.
Yeah,
Like
but
I'm totally into terrible.
if you're the descendants of, who was it, A. Milne, you're like, oh, this generation thinks Winnie the Pooh is a terrible slasher movie. They're
No,
never
I
gonna
once
open
again,
up the book.
I don't think there's a generation that's identifying with that. Now, you did say when you first brought it up to me, and we were talking about it in a past episode, this could be the thing that introduces somebody to Winnie the Pooh. But if you let's say this is like your thing is like slasher movies and you're like 13 years old and you're finding them online or streaming or what have you, which right now is like completely at ease, and you're like, wow, this is really kind of weird, like, well, I don't understand this whole Winnie the Pooh kind of thing, and then you Google search Winnie the Pooh and then you come across the book Tao of Pooh,
Right.
and
I
then you're
mean,
like, wow,
maybe.
this is kind of, what I mean? Like, things can't be just so blanketed as horrible that it devastates generations of people. It's still something that could lead somebody to a place where they read a pretty amazing book that might actually help said slasher film fan to become a little more,
uh,
let's say, open in their, existence.
well, two things. So yeah, I mean,
Two
that you're
things.
kind of insulated because anybody can make Winnie the Pooh content, and so hopefully there'll be some good and bad and some mediocre, but it won't just be one version of it that just takes over the consciousness, but of a generation. But it could, and it all depends. And then, like, you got to think of it like, okay, when we were born, Hercules is public domain, and we saw many films and movies, but we're smart enough people to know that it goes back to, the ancient Rome and ancient Greece, and that those are, wall paintings and urn, carvings. And then you put everything in the place of the era that it was, revived in. I mean, same thing with King Kong, right? That came out in what, like 1920 something. So, by the time we were little kids, we thought, oh wow, King Kong is this great guy that fights Godzilla. And then you find, because it was already public domain, right? But then you find out, like, oh no, you know, it was originally the classic black and white movie with claymation. So,
Well, it led me to Mighty Joe Young, and
right.
then Mighty Joe Young led me to my dad. So my mom had me watch it because it was one of her favorite movies, Mighty Joe Young. And then my dad took my brother and I to a showing of Harryhausen's The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad.
Oh yeah, that was that.
So I just don't subscribe to this is a horrible thing. It's just a thing.
It just
It's
is.
out there, and
Yeah.
it needs to be justified by said individual. But you even have demographic groups. But generational is such a hard thing to like point and predict upon,
Yeah.
and so I don't think it's
Yeah, no, I
I
mean, there's
just don't
nothing to say.
subscribe.
It's just what whatever's going to happen happens. Some things are going to get popular, and some remakes are going to be, the definitive remake for a generation, and then that'll come and go, and then people discover the older versions, and they'll say, "Wow, this is cultish, and this is
Well, one of
behind."
my biggest concerns moving forward, especially when AI takes over, and when I say AI takes over, I'm talking about taking over streaming and a content streaming platform that's in the same like TikTok vein, where you're getting things fed to you, based on the dopamine that you subscribe to or
Interesting.
prescribe to,
Interesting. You think there's going to
and
be
so
an AI run channel and people are just going to tune
yes,
in?
oh, absolutely,
Wow.
110% is how these major corporations are going to move, and I'm talking about like Meta right
And they're going to
now
have a host, right? Hi,
is
I'm your host, Maria Melito. And
yeah, and it's going to be completely based on you selecting that host.
yeah.
And the only thing,
I
the
want
only
Elvira.
thing that has to break, but you'll be able to get your Elvira meets Betty Page, or Elvira meets
Right.
Turbo Pit Fighter. I mean, you can. It's not going to be so analog anymore. It's going to be piping into Disney like a crack addict.
Yeah.
I can't say any better. And it to me that's very disturbing, because I think one of the most beautiful things about being alive is stumbling upon and finding something,
A great piece of
and
art.
then and anything, and just unraveling it. You're just like, wow, what is this thing? Comic book, movie, whatever. And I think that's going to be the first thing that's collateral damage, is discovery. You're going to get piped into said, oh, you like sword and sorcery. Well, here you go. You type in sword and sorcery 10 years ago, it would have all been, Robert E. Howard Conan, Fritz Lieber, Fox's Kothar, Lynn Carter, all these guys. Now, when you do, it's completely clouded by what's really referred to as a historical, like Game of Thrones is classified as sword and sorcery.
Yeah.
I agree, but categorically, it's not my style
Yeah.
of sword and sorcery. I want it
It's
way more dirty, gritty,
dragon
and
lore.
inappropriate. So,
So I hit my first text box here where we need to maybe expand it a little bit. You'll see when you get there. I just
okay,
made a little side note here. Expand underneath.
cool.
Um,
All right, we're coming to a close, and we have a interview with Adam Lemma. Speaking of, well, this guy has got the sword and sorcery down, and I cannot wait to talk to him. And I just want, for the record, an apology to you, Jake, because I am a little concerned for your lack of being involved in sword and sorcery as much as I am,
yeah.
with somebody that I think is probably is equal to mine, because the first thing I'm going to be talking about is his reference to a story called The Hawks Over Shem, and how he has based this character and story and world, based on the true sword and sorcery. So we do have to wrap this up so we can get prepared for that interview with Adam. But man, what another great episode. I am chugging along on the back cover of our
Yeah, you were doing
second
some
turbo teaser.
I know I put a highly technical detail in the
I
tread
got my
of the
point
dirt
.5.
bike, which
Oh,
has
yeah.
little like nuts
Oh,
and
yeah.
bolts in it.
You got this completed. You're now working on these blocks of text. So that'll be coming our way. And then we'll go think, oh, wow, look, Adam is ready to come in. So
Okay,
let's
so let's
let's
dump
do a
in.
close, and yeah, let's get ready.
All
All
right.
right. Have a great one. Read comics. Make them if you choose.
See y'all.